Hi everybody and welcome back to Impi. In our last episode we were enjoying this magnificent place called Wallacea. Beautiful. We're now going to be leaving Raja Ampat soon. We can't share it all. But before we leave, I'd like to share this place called Arborek. Well, this island became quite a treasure for us. We loved anchoring here. It's remote and yet it's beautiful. You've got plenty of internet, which is unusual for these remote little islands on this part of the coast. So we just loved anchoring here and becoming part of the community. The community are very much into tourism. They put a lot of effort into the art and the culture of their island, and tourists are extremely welcome here. Just an amazing place, well swept and kept clean. We really loved our time here. Bye-bye. Hello. So this beautiful little island is a place where we spend quite a bit of time at. It's absolutely beautiful. We're out of season here. There's not many people here, which makes it really special. But of course, traveling in these areas out of season also means when you're under sail, you're going to be in for rough weather potentially. So we're going to be leaving for Hoga. We're watching weather carefully, and this is the island which we are going to leave Raja Ampat region from. A fantastic thing about being anchored here out of season is that the dive centers don't really have that many people, and so we were very fortunate to get rides with our buddies who have a dive center out of Wallacea, and here we are diving in Yangello. In fact, we're just going all over the show to these most beautiful dive spots. Amazing. Well, it's unfortunate that they used to blast in the old days on the reefs to bring the fish to the surface, and one can see it today. The reef is not in great shape in many different places, yet there are little gems tucked in between. But here in Raja Ampat, it's still very beautiful. The fish life, if one just pays attention to all the little details, there's plenty to see, and it's really a treasure to be diving in this region.
Something better, I can see it. Will you hold on to me when I break through with it? Something better, I can feel it. Into the fire, out of the life we know.
But yeah, we're having a good time and we're getting to a new place, so it's all part of the adventure, guys. It's all part of the adventure. Sailing remote areas out of season means that we are going to have sometimes uncomfortable passages. This particular passage we're sailing very close hauled, kind of close to the wind. so it's on the nose most of the way and it's uncomfortable. We can't capture it properly, but it's kind of like being in 4x4 mode. We look forward to getting to our destination. Well, we're heading against the weather down to the Wakatobi Islands, a place called Hoga Island. But before we get there, we'll stop at a small island group. There's a little island called Deer Island, and we're going to take a bit of a break there. It's difficult to capture sea state, but being out of season, one of the things here are strong currents. And with the wind and the currents, we're going into it, so we had to really take it slow on the boat, not to pound the boat. It's been a fairly rough trip getting across here. We're now actually in the lee of this huge island. It's a real treat to actually arrive into the shelter of an island. It's can't explain how good that feels. Some coconut trees, white sandy beaches, and it's actually an alternative destination to where we planned to be today. We had to slow the boat down to cope with the waves, and so we've chosen a different location to what we had planned on. Beautiful beach, palm trees, there's palm trees everywhere. It's 27 meters under our keels at this point. Charts are not accurate. See, we're going over land. That's why I love to use a program like SAS Planet or any satellite photography. Well, the folks on Deer Island were amazing to us, and it was a great stopover for us and a great place to just recoup and get ready for the next leg of our journey. Well, since we'd stopped over here and caught our breath, we thought to take a look around the island group. To sail to all the little islands here, maybe hang off one of them before departing for Hoga Island. Well, it's such fun always seeing new places, new islands, especially remote ones. It's fantastic. We're going to drop anchor off this little island called Walo. Now, the currents can get up here a bit. It can be uncomfortable. One really would like to have it in great weather. We always have a hook with a pin through it to lock the anchor chain because we find sometimes hooks have the ability to come loose. So this has been the way we've done it for years. So yeah, we're going to get some rest up here and we're getting ready for the big trek down to Hoga Island. Well, it's a beautiful place, but I must say that at night the currents were turning and rolling the boat side on, so it wasn't that comfortable. Probably good in settled weather. Well, now we're sailing for Hoga Island. Well, everything here seems normal. We're close hauled, so we're going upwind again, but it's okay. We see some strange patterns in the sky. At this stage, I'm going to actually share a story which I told my mate Stuart from Danga Marine, who was visiting us recently. Check out Danga Marine on YouTube. He's a fantastic guy, does very helpful videos for the sailing community. Anyway, Stu, so we're cruising through Indonesia. It takes me back to a time when I've got this buddy who's on a boat in Grenada.
Okay.
And Anna and I ended up in Grenada, and we get chatting to these guys, very nice people. They look after our boat when we fly off to the Miami boat show and everything, and so we become like really good mates of theirs. Anyway, he starts telling me about these things called chemtrails.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of chemtrails? Okay, so chemtrails, he tells me, it's like conspiracy theories, right?
Okay. Right.
So there's these big jets flying in the sky,
Yep.
and they're spraying barium or something into
Okay.
the atmosphere. It's something to do with altering weather patterns,
Okay, like a cloud seeding.
like
sort
a
of
cloud
thing.
seeding
okay.
sort of thing. Anyway, the people are doing this, and it's sort of poisoning us, and it's like this big. Anyway, I don't believe this stuff because I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know. Anyway, so Anna and I leave Raja Ampat in Indonesia, and we want to get across the top of Buru and down to Hoga Island.
Yeah.
And we're sailing along, and lo and behold, if I don't see these big jets in the air spraying the stuff into the atmosphere. And so I'm actually talking on my GoPro, because you know we do YouTube videos and things like I'm doing now.
Really?
So I'm talking on my GoPro and I'm saying, I wonder if Greg was correct with this whole theory of chemtrails. Starts out like that, and then it ends up like that, like this. That one, that started just like that, and you'll see in a while this one will look just like that, because I've literally got footage here of planes flying, no smoke coming out of it.
Yeah.
2 planes flying and smoke coming out.
Right. So it's not atmospheric. It's.
No, so is it because they're on a different altitude?
Yeah.
Or what is this? I don't know. But the planes seem to be on the same altitude and the same size planes.
Mm-hmm.
We're sailing, and I'm like now quite worried that this is starting to develop like a frontal system, because I'm looking up at the clouds and I'm going, hang on a minute, that looks like a frontal system coming for us.
Can they also spray good weather or only bad?
Well, I don't know.
Okay,
I mean,
fair
this
enough.
is the thing.
We'll find out.
Anyway, so we're out there, and mate, the waves pick up,
Yeah.
and it's getting a bit like, whoa, this is like pretty serious stuff. The winds are picking up, and I can see these fingers coming out of the sky, and I'm like, well, that's conspiracy, and I'm in the real world now, and definitely in the rough weather.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I'm videoing it, and here I am in the rough weather, and you can see the fingers coming out of the sky. Very difficult to capture the size of the ocean. We're totally reefed. It's not nice. It's very uncomfortable, but it's doable. So we're doing it. And mate, the next thing we're in a storm. It's like a survival storm. Now, whether it's jets or whether it's jet streams or natural phenomena, we don't know, because we don't want to go there, right? But we're in a storm.
You've got to deal with it.
We've got to deal with
it. Yeah.
Anyway, we get through the storm, and that afternoon, that evening, we sail into debris. There's just stuff floating around.
Yeah.
And we're in an oil slick. There's oil everywhere. Huge oil slick out here. And it goes for miles up this way. It sort of ends there. You can see where the water is ruffled. Water is ruffled up there. The water is ruffled up there. And between, it's smooth. And a lot of oil and crap in the water. Makes me think something's gone wrong here. Maybe a collision. Something in a storm, I don't know, but look, I mean, the seas have been whipping up pretty badly, and we're going right through it. Unfortunately, the stuff's going to be sticking to my hulls, but there we go. All oil, thick crude oil. And so we start thinking, Anna and I start thinking, well, what the hell is going on here, you know? And so she calls the Indonesian authorities, and she's like, you know, we've sailed into the debris of what looks like a ship or some disaster. We're in an oil slick.
Yeah.
And apparently a ship has capsized in the storm. 25 souls are lost. And Anna and I are like, we're devastated.
Yeah.
We're just like, we don't know.
Yeah, it was really quite incredible actually, because I had to speak in Indonesian.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so like it's not my home language. So I was trying to, because I have like books and an app, and like trying to explain that there's like way too much oil and pieces of stuff in the sea.
To just be spilled or something, it's a
I
total
like
loss.
said there is something that's really gone on. And eventually, because there was not an English speaking person there, eventually they ran back and they said that a cargo ship had been lost there.
Really?
Yeah, and it had ore on board.
Oh,
Yeah.
like ore.
Yeah, what they were saying is
Yeah.
apparently it's not totally uncommon.
Yeah.
They were saying that they load up these ships with ore,
Mm-hmm.
which includes the soil, so it's the raw material. It
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah,
been
yeah. It hasn't been
processed.
processed in any way yet.
There's some moisture in the raw material. So as the ships are going through these rough seas, the moisture is separating out of the material and
Mhm.
forms a skin between the ship and,
Okay.
and the material.
Yep.
And then as the ship rolls,
Oh, it's like a free surface effect.
it's like a free surface effect. So you've got this,
Okay.
this ore sliding up and down the ship,
Like a slush.
and it actually capsized the ship.
Wow. And you went through it, like
We were in that storm, mate. We were like in that storm, 50 odd knots
straight after seeing the planes.
Yeah.
straight after seeing the plane.
No, it was, to me, it was quite clear that because it was very dry where we were,
Mm-hmm.
and I do really think they seeded the front for
Yeah,
the
right.
rain.
Wow.
We didn't actually get any rain. We just
But
got
we don't
lots of
know.
wind.
Yeah,
We
it's
don't
weird,
know,
though, isn't
and
it?
we're
Weird
not-
situation.
We're not prying. We just like
No. And you didn't see anyone to pick up or anything. It's just
No.
wow.
I just saw pieces. And
pieces of the ship. And the next morning, we could just see oil, like big
Yeah.
puddles of oil, like raw oil, all
Just
around
like-
the boat.
Yeah.
I think it must have been a very sudden thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think it happened suddenly, like
It's weird,
boat just
isn't
went-
it?
Yeah.
You have a computer on board that is just about calculating stability of the boat based on your current cargo, your draft, how much ballast. It is really interesting.
Well, in that particular situation, we survived a storm. They didn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you know exactly what you're
yeah.
saying.
Cheers.
Yes, to staying alive.
Yeah. In the calm broadwater.
I was going to say to you, I was only joking, I do know about chemtrails. I used to be a chemtrail pilot, and I'm glad I didn't say that when I found out that they died. No, I was joking.
Well, yeah, we found the situation incredibly sad. Anna and I took a long time to process being sea people and having been in the vicinity of the ship capsizing and not being aware and not being able to help. And by the time we'd got through to the authorities, because we weren't getting through on the satellite phone, we were trying to interpret English to Indonesian when we did. It was really tough, but it became evident that they knew about the ship. The AIS signal had stopped transponding in that storm, and they knew that the ship had disappeared off the radar. So very, very, very sad, and hectic conditions. We were in Beaufort 9, really just through the night, having a very rough passage. I'm going to let the camera roll a little while so that you guys can just get a feeling for the ocean. It's calmed down now. We're grateful to be in daylight hours. Being in severe storms at night is not fun, let alone in the daytime, when you can see everything going on around you. dive at Hoga. It's been one of those not so pleasant passages. We had a huge front come through us, big waves, and it's kind of lingered. It stayed with us a long time. So we're just very happy to be here, ecstatic to be here.
For the days when I'm lost in your kiss.
Anna's happy to have arrived. So we are happy to be at Hoga, man. Happy, happy, happy.
I got a feeling like never before, that all these miles were worth it. Chasing your
Hoga Island, here we are, and we are ready to soak in the sun rays and just warm up and feel the goodness of being in cruising mode again. Locals were coming up to us with their canoes and offering us all sorts. We were giving them caps and t-shirts, and they were offering us fish, and this fellow with his octopus. The whole area is a national park. Hoga is a national park. Here the authorities are collecting money from us. Very friendly people. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
You're a good man. Hey my man, how you doing? Sahula.
Sahila.
Sahila.
Yes.
Sahila. That is Sahila. I am Brent. Good to meet you, Sahila. The man on the bow. He's doing a good job here. He's holding the boat. How are you, my man?
Short one.
Short one?
Short one.
Strot one?
Yeah.
Ah, very nice. I'm Brent.
Oh, right. Okay.
Good to meet you. Thanks, guys. Amazing people, so friendly. Indonesian people, just very, very friendly. Well, now it's time to go and explore the islands. We've paid our dues. We can now be relaxed, and the place is pretty much ours.
Oh, there are stories to tell, the times we grew and the times we fell. Oh, I've been afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place. Road will lead us to a better place.
Look there, very good smile. Oh yeah, there's another one coming. Very beautiful, hey? Oh yeah. Hoga Dive Resort with all the beautiful girls. Very nice, very beautiful. Oh, these ladies, I'm taking them to South Africa.
Yummy.
So this man here, he's a very nice guy. He's from Wangi, and he's a dive instructor at Wangi. Anna's drinking coconut here. They've opened this very nicely for us, and they've just given it to us as a gift.
Yes.
And there you can see they're chopping the coconut. So these were amazing people, lovely people, but in spite of their best efforts, they couldn't arrange a dive boat to come and take us diving. So we decided to look for another dive center, and while we were waiting for Ruan, a guy we'd heard about who heads up the Paddy Dive Center there, we decided to look around the island and just take in the beautiful views. Very beautiful here, but all the buildings seem to be totally run down, and I mean there's like a whole little village here of houses on the edge of the water. So it turns out that this is an abandoned island resort, and there are many conflicting stories about why the resort has been abandoned. So we're not going to go there in this video. We're looking still to go diving. What's happened to the diving? Right guys, so we were going to go for a dive this morning. It turned out to be a bit of a disaster. And then we discovered a dive center with the PADI certification and everything on it, which we hadn't seen initially. I took a lot of footage of the area, which I'll show here while I speak. But it was interesting because we placed a call to a dude, and where do you think he's from? Same country as me, from South Africa. You see, we South Africans are good dudes. His name's Ruan. He's from a place called Somerset West, very close to where I grew up, a place called Stellenbosch. And we're sitting with Ruan. Ruan's actually come out to Impi, and there the man is.
Hello.
And I'm just curious, Ruan, how you got to be here. We can see that your dive center is quite a professional setup there with the PADI certification and everything. And it would just be interesting for our friends, we obviously went to the wrong place, to know more about your setup there.
Sure. So our place is called Hoga Island Marine Station. We work in partnership 2 months a year with Operation Wallacea, which is a big expedition organization for university and school students. And then the rest of the year we operate mostly as a conservation and research center, but also taking recreational divers out if we have anyone come along. We operate with anyone that comes along basically, but we don't market actively to the recreational dive market. But I am a PADI instructor as well, so we do run courses if we do have guests that come here. But we mostly focus towards dive master training, and we also run conservation projects which are linked to my PhD research, which I'm doing here on coral restoration. So
that's interesting.
yeah.
Coral restoration.
Yeah, so I'm actually doing a PhD through the university in Makassar in Sulawesi. Essentially, we are looking at the rubble slopes here, where some of the branching corals were impacted by disease about 3 years ago, and we now have lots of rubble slopes of dead corals. And
These rubble slopes weren't caused by blasting or anything like that?
No, so you do have some areas of rubble around the Wakatobi that were caused by dynamite, and you do occasionally get the odd bit of dynamite and cyanide fishing going on within the archipelago, but around our area for the most part that's been eradicated. WWF has done some work in the past here, as well as CoreMap, on educating the local community about the dangers and the impacts of dynamite fishing and cyanide fishing.
You can come out here on a fine morning and there'll just be rampant blasting, and blasting literally physically destroys the three-dimensional structure of the reef. If you see places where there's been a history of blasting, or even a limited amount of blasting, you'll basically see the reef has been reduced to a rubble field.
It's already been widespread for decades. The marine environment is becoming less attractive, and certainly from the point of view of providing food for local communities, catches are dropping.
In 2 years of being here, I've only seen one example myself of dead fish on a reef of where there's been a blast.
Wow.
And during the expedition this year there were 2 examples from further outlying reefs where our monitoring team went and found dead fish where they think they'd been blasting.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So, and these rubble slopes that you speak of, that some sort of disease that came into the area?
So there was so what happens with the acropora, the branching corals, is that often they form single species fields where they're all from one genetic stock. So if there's a disease, it can really wipe out that whole field, and it's kind of a natural process for the branching corals, in that they'll grow, one genetic stock will get wiped out by disease, another will come along and replace that. But in geological terms it's very fast, maybe 30 years, but obviously in human terms that's a long time for those to be regenerated. And as well as when you link that in with the human impacts on reefs that we're experiencing these days, particularly climate change and rising temperatures and the extra bleaching that's going on and the increased intensity of the bleaching events.
Are you actually seeing it worsening over time?
Here, not so much.
Right.
So we didn't experience heavy bleaching like the Barrier Reef in 2016-17.
Yeah.
We're not experiencing the heavy bleaching like in Maldives and the Seychelles that you're experiencing at the moment. One reason for that is that we have these cold water currents flowing through here that kind of help to buffer the reefs a little bit against that temperature change.
It's the same in New Caledonia.
Yeah.
There's less bleaching there than on the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we were actually very disappointed
About the
looking at
Barrier
Great
Reef.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, there's been a lot of kind of negative press about the Barrier Reef. Yes, there's a problem, but there's also been some sensationalization of that as well, where parts of the Barrier Reef are really badly damaged, particularly in the far north, but the majority of the corals have actually started to recover quite well from those bleaching events.
What's quite interesting is we've heard friends of ours actually sailed through floating rock from a volcano, and they did a whole video on it. It actually was on the news in Australia and everything. And
the Pumice Island.
yeah, the Pumice, and it's like miles and miles of floating volcanic rock. And what's interesting is that the biologists in Australia are saying they can't wait for it to reach Queensland. It's on its way there because it's going to be really good for the corals.
Okay.
Because it carries some nutrient or something that will stimulate the growth of the corals.
There may well be some nutrients in there.
I thought that was interesting.
It looks like a rolling moonscape. A surreal stone slick, so rare, so large, it turned the deep blue coral sea grey as far as the eye could see. Pumice, millions of pieces, some as big as basketballs, floating in formation of Fiji, and right under a Tasmanian couple's catamaran at night.
Michael came in and said, "Liz, you've got to come out and see this, it's crazy." And yeah, it was dark, so we just were shining the flashlight on it, and the whole ocean was sort of matte. It was just like gravel.
Rocks jammed their rudder and scratched their cat. They took a sample for science and turned around.
Like an iceberg, they float just like 90% under the water, 10% out.
The mass is 50 kilometres wide. From space, it's bigger than Manhattan Island, and it's coming to Australia.
So it can literally wash up from tip of Cape York all the way down to Tasmania.
Previous shocks created similar tides. Coral hitched a ride and made the Great Barrier Reef greater.
We're going to have millions of corals, for example, arriving kind of en masse.
The raft will break up before Pumice washes up on Australian beaches by mid-next year. Erin Edwards, 7 News.
Interesting, you
Yeah,
know?
it's very interesting.
Gee, so you're an interesting guy. You're not just a guy that takes people out for diving. I mean, you're doing a lot of research and studying and the regeneration of corals.
Yeah.
And these rubble slopes. You reckon the rubble slopes will come right again? They'll...
I mean, the big issue with rubble slopes is because it's broken pieces of coral, it's unconsolidated and it's shifting around in the currents. So the coral larvae, if they're trying to attach and start to grow new colonies, it needs a fixed solid
fixed space.
substrate to attach to and start to grow. So you'll have in these rubble beds that they'll attach onto a piece of rubble and maybe start to grow, but over time that will start to roll around and it will basically kill off the juvenile corals.
So what do you do about that? Because it'll kill off the corals on the stable basis as well, right? Rolling over the top of it.
So what we have is we have artificial structures that we're putting in. Originally they were called spiders, but they're now called reef stars. So actually Mars, the chocolate company, has a big operation in Sulawesi, off the coast of Makassar, in South Sulawesi. So they have been there for about 4 or 5 years trialing reef restoration techniques.
Gee. That's
Frank
incredible.
Mars is very interested in in marine conservation in terms of protecting the
Like the
ocean.
Mars bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that makes me look at them in a much more friendly way.
You like Mars bars, do you, love?
Well, no, I don't think they're particularly good for your health. But hearing that, I can endorse them.
Yeah.
Got a local guy here that's worked with us for a number of years with the expedition groups. He's been welding those metal frames together. We coat them with rust converter, and you then coat them with the fiberglass coat.
Are you doing
packed
that
with
all
sand.
here on the island?
Right here, about 50 meters away from the boat, underwater there.
Well, oh, so you build them underwater?
Yeah, so we can take you out to see that as well.
That's
what we're doing
fantastic,
there,
eh? What is your dive company called?
So it's Hoga Island Marine Station.
But you've got a very serious dive setup there.
Yeah, so
Which
that's
is-
because we have the big groups. They need to be able to cater for up to 120 students at a time.
So when there's just a few of us coming in with boats and that sort of thing, we're not just sort of a pain in the butt, are we?
No, not at all. Actually, that's what keeps us going outside of the main season, really, is having a steady flow of a few people here and there coming in.
Very cool.
But actually, our bread and butter is getting in trainees and interns for longer periods of time, 1 or 2 months at a time.
So the thing is that when we actually Googled, we've been diving all over Raja Ampat, and that has been fantastic. We've already put one video out, just an introduction into Indonesian. We're going to put some out now on Raja Ampat. It was really beautiful diving there, but when we look in the guidebook, they speak about Hoga Island as being one of the Mecca dive spots down this end of the world. They talk about a place called Pinnacles, I think. Everybody
so
talks
there's outer pinnacle and inner pinnacle. There's two pinnacles up on the north end of the island, just off the reef.
the little pygmy seahorses or something.
We do get pygmy seahorse. They're not very common here, and you have to go relatively deep to find them. 24, 25 meters at least normally.
When we were in Tasmania, we went to this breeding center for seahorses.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we
So-
should send a few to you, Ruan.
Yeah, and they are such cute things, you know, because you could actually handle them and they like curl around your finger, and it is so beautiful. So yeah, we did like the whole sort of looking into their life cycle and how they are bred in Tasmania.
And there's so many species or varieties of them, you know,
Yeah.
it's incredible. And that was down in Tasmania. Amazing.
So the pinnacles are really nice. We have another very, very nice advanced site. These are all, the outer reefs are all kind of quite advanced sites because you can get some strong currents.
Right.
Unless you're hitting them at exactly slack tide.
Yeah.
Generally we would plan dives based on the tides and what we think the current's going to be like.
Right.
And so we would never dive those further reefs when there's a strong outgoing tide.
Right.
Because it creates some very strong down currents sometimes. And
Oh, so you actually get downdrafts here. You can get caught in the down current.
yeah, there's some you can actually see the waves on the north end of the island.
Yeah.
So on the other side of the island, the north wall there is really probably the best diving on the island, but you can't dive it for maybe 2/3 of the year.
Wow.
Because it's just too rough there and the currents are too dangerous.
That's why we always go with the local dive schools, because that sort of thing you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
You know, even though you may be fully qualified as a
We
dive
nearly
master,
lost a friend like that.
you know, you cannot
Immature
know the
mothers.
local conditions, and so we have got all the equipment, but we still go with a dive school, you know.
Yeah, and we only know that because of the guys that have been coming here on research for 20 years.
And ruin these down currents. What actually happens there? I mean, can they suck a diver down?
I've got stories, first-hand stories from friends of mine that have been coming here for 15, 20 odd years, where they've been caught in currents where they've literally had to take their fins off and rock climb up the wall to get out of currents because they were being sucked down.
Oh guys, just a quick break here. I think this is really important stuff. I mean, I myself am a paddy dive master, and this kind of thing really worries me. When we have all the gear on our boat like we do, we need to be aware when we go diving far away from other people about these things. He has a little extract out of a YouTube video that I saw of a guy who was caught in a downdraft. He's a young guy, and you can hear the distress. Not to distress you, but just to give a feeling of what goes on when you're being sucked down. You've inflated your BCD. You can hear the guy inflating his BCD, and he's just not going up, he's going down. See these guys clinging to the wall over here? That's a good move. So even with the BCD fully inflated,
Yep.
you still travel down?
Yep, still being pulled down. I know the one lecturer from Wellington University in New Zealand, British guy, and his PhD student, who was also a dive master, and they were doing research on the one further reef out there, and they got caught at, I think they were at 16 or 17 meters. And they got caught in a down current in a whirlpool that they were holding onto each other's BCDs like that, and they couldn't see each other because of the amount of bubbles that had been created, and they just got sucked down to 40 meters and then spat out the side.
This is handy stuff to know, you know, because we hear about down currents and stuff. We don't experience them personally, and we kind of think, what is all of this about? Surely you just inflate your BCD fully, and
yeah, I mean, you can sometimes, but
Do you drop your weights as well? Or
I mean, again, you know, when you're getting to that stage, you're getting into really serious
because you're going to come up so fast. So for non-divers, you know, there are safety stops. You can't just come up to the surface really quickly because you can get the bends. You've got to actually stop. There's limits at which you've got to stop. So what happened to our young diver friend here who is in distress? Well, he's managed to somehow get out of the downdraft, and he's just flying up for the surface.
Alright, we got to go back down. Go back down to 30 feet. 30 feet. 30 feet.
And you know, it's remote. There's not a lot of access to hyperbaric chambers and that's why we always dive very conservatively. We generally don't dive deeper than about 25 meters. If we do a deep dive, we do a minimum 3-hour surface interval. Normally only one deeper dive every day. We normally maximum limit of all dives roughly 60 minutes.
but that's really
Very good. You know, we rocked up here not quite knowing where to go, and that's why we're introducing you guys to Ruan, and he's turned out to be a very interesting guy. I mean, you can learn a lot about a whole lot more to the environment around Hoga Island, the environment of coral reefs in general, if you just come and chat to Ruan. Very interesting chatting to Ruan, and also I'm pretty sure you'll get the best sort of diving experience with him. So there we go. Thank you, Ruan.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you. That runs around the whole north of the island, from the north wall at the top, they're running all the way around and down. This way.
Ah, there's Kundang.
Hello.
And his son?
Coco.
Coco?
Hono.
Hono. Is that Hono?
Yeah.
Very nice. Hello, Hono. How are you, man? And Kundang has been very kind to make us some feather type flies. And this is what they catch fish with here, right?
Yeah. Tuna.
Tuna?
Mahi mahi.
Mai mai?
Travali.
Trevally?
For everything.
Yeah, they like this one, eh? The feathers. Kundang, now we're going to catch a lot of fish, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
Finger crossed, yeah.
Not like me who's struggling to catch fish. Fish do not want to eat my lures in this country. They're saying they taste like plastic, eh?
Yeah.
The fish are like, no more plastic, please.
Yeah.
Give me feathers. There's Kundang with his fish, you see?
With his feathers.
He's dangling his feathers. Okay, guys. Well, wonderful, wonderful people. We'll be leaving now. Well, we're leaving Hoga Island for the Komodo Islands. And we'll be looking at things like the Komodo dragons and surrounding terrain. Moving off to venture with diving with whale sharks and riding buffaloes and all of this sort of thing. So stay tuned. Keep well, everybody. Take care of yourselves. And we hope to see you next time round. Cheers, everyone. Impi out.
After many long months among the sea and the stars, New Caledonia is in sight of our bow. With a wheel in my hands and a thrill in our hearts, we've crossed this great ocean to our port is Lafau. Moose comes running and greets us again. Our old friends or new friends, all we have and all we know, reaching out to learn more somehow. Fly every fly, the sea will work for our way. Fly every fly, the wind at our backs we fly. The stars are so bright, to the windward we run. The dolphins sing their songs as they play in the sun. The ocean runs through me like a vein of blue gold, and my heart is again stolen like the sea songs of old. Moose comes running and greets us again. Our old friends are new.